celebrar d'alguna manera els autors que són contemporanis però que ja tenen a darrere una obra més extensa i més consolidada, però també celebrar que estem obrint camí. Vam començar, quan va començar el QLit ara fa 3 anys, amb un concurs que es diu Imagina un amor, que estava dirigit a persones que bé estaven estudiant a l'institut o hi treballaven, o hi tenia alguna mena de relació, i la idea era crear un espai de conversa, de diàleg sobre afectes i sobre identitats no normatives, i estem molt contents perquè el guanyador de les 2 darreres edicions, que és el Xavier Lluís, acaba de treure un llibre que es diu Les vides excepcionals dels passatgers, i enguany... Així? Perdó. Sí? Ho he de repetir tot? D'acord. I enguany celebrem que tenim aquest llibre que d'alguna manera és el que volíem, no? Obrir un espai per escriure, obrir un estímul per escriure a persones que potser no s'ho havien plantejat però que tenien coses a dir, i estem molt joiosos que hagi anat així. Aquest festival el coordinem el Sebastià Portell, que el teniu allà al darrere, el Ricard Ruiz, que vindrà una mica més tard, i jo mateixa, i el que volíem fer una mica des de l'associació era... Mira, acaba d'arribar el Ricard. El que volíem fer des de l'associació era omplir un buit que ens semblava que existia, perquè havíem estudiat literatura catalana tant de manera formal com informal en molts llocs, i se'ns havien donat moltes claus interpretatives, tant lligades a la vida dels autors com lligades a corrents literaris, a tota mena de teories, etc. Però, en canvi, la clau interpretativa de si els autors eren del col·lectiu LGTBQI+, o si les temàtiques de les seves obres ho eren, no se'ns havia donat, quan això és una cosa que és habitual en moltes altres literatures. Per tant, vam imitar el que fan aquestes altres literatures creant un festival, i 3 anys més tard creiem que sí, que es corrobora que el buit existia, que l'estem omplint i n'estem molt orgullosos. Avui omplim amb la Marina Espasa i la Maggie Nelson. La Marina Espasa no només ha traduït els Argonautes i Judith Butler i moltes altres coses, sinó que també és autora, i per tant és un doble goig tenir-la aquí. I l'entrevista l'hem gravada i l'hem subtitulada perquè sigui accessible a tothom, perquè es va fer en anglès, i ara la Marina us explica una mica més.
Sí, hola, bona tarda a tothom. Doncs sí, us explico que això fa uns dies vaig poder parlar amb la Maggie Nelson, que em va fer molta il·lusió. Clar, encara hauria fet més il·lusió que vingués, però bueno, això ara és impossible. I la veritat és que la conversa va ser molt interessant, espero que us agradi, però que el llibre, que ja m'havia agradat traduir-lo, em va encantar. El llibre és que és fantàstic, o sigui, si encara no l'heu llegit, de veritat us el recomano, perquè ja veureu que ara jo vaig intentar que ho expliqués, però el que és increïble és com barreja, no? Com l'alta intel·lectualitat, les teories queer supercomplicades, amb la seva experiència més íntima, que és que ella estava embarassada i a més estava en una història d'amor amb algú que estava fent-la transitant de dona a home. Com barreja aquestes dues coses, la reflexió i el diari íntim, el resultat és aquest llibre, que és un llibre que no s'assembla a cap altre, de veritat. I llavors, res, a veure que us agradi molt la conversa, i després, si voleu, en parlem una mica.
Els Argonautes, que és aquest llibre que tinc aquí, és un llibre molt inusual, és com una barreja entre una autobiografia, on una dona explica el seu embaràs i el naixement del seu primer fill, mentre explica també la història d'amor amb en Harry Dodge, que és un artista, que és una persona que està transicionant des de dona cap a home, sense acabar-se d'identificar del tot amb cap dels 2 gèneres. Llavors, els 2 processos biològics, aquest embaràs i aquesta transició, diguéssim, a base d'hormones, coincideixen en el temps. I el llibre els explica barrejant-los de manera molt, molt subtil amb tot de textos i persones canòniques i no tan canòniques que han escrit coses molt, diguéssim, històricament, molt importants sobre el gènere, la maternitat i la sexualitat. I és increïble com barreja aquests 2 nivells. Traduir-lo va ser un repte i va ser un luxe per l'altra editorial, i ara poder entrevistar-la a ella encara és més luxe, és a dir, que començo ja perquè puguem sentir-la una estona més. So, Maggie, hello, how are you?
Hello, hi, how are you?
I'm fine. I'm going to start the conversation, I'm going to read a sentence from the book, so that maybe will give us a way to start talking about it. At one point, you're talking about genderqueer family making, and you say one of the gifts of genderqueer family making and animal loving is the revelation of caretaking as detachable from and attachable to any gender, any sentient being. So I think your book is great to break cliches such as mothers are better caretakers than fathers, blah blah blah. And my question is, were those kind of discoveries one of the reasons that set you up to write the book? What made you decide I'm going to write about this?
Well, as I say in the back of the book about the book being a bad idea, or like a lot of writing things seeming like bad ideas, I felt like writing this book was a bad idea. It was actually some books I have tried to write, like thrown myself at and been like, I will tackle this thing. And then this book was a book that I was writing. I wasn't even writing it as a book. I was writing things down on the side of the project I wanted to be working on. And people in my life kept telling me the things I was writing down were interesting about my family and stuff. But my family got to come in as well. But I was hesitant to do so, and so I think it was more a book that I had to surrender to it being written than it was anything I wanted to to write necessarily.
Okay. And there's this point where you, quite at the beginning, where you explain that there's this scene where a friend of yours sees a picture of you and Harry, and I think you're pregnant, and there's Harry's son, and she says, "Oh, what are you doing? You really look like a normative family now." I wanted to ask you, do you think that image still doesn't represent at all the kind of family you are, or you wanted to build? Or
I think that passage of the book is interesting to me because a lot of people have read it differently than how I read it. In that I don't personally have a lot of anxiety about any kind of family, like what it looks like or who's in it. Like, I've dated a lot of men. Like it's like not really interesting to me. And my friend who said that about the mug was a queer friend who was making a joke that we were both in on. Like it wasn't an actual critique. It was like a joke. Like, oh my God, I've never seen anything so heteronormative in all my life, because that friend, they know my family and we were just kidding around. So I think a lot of people took that to mean that I was very worried that my family wouldn't look queer. And I don't care what my family looks like, you know what I mean? So it was more about my friend and me laughing about other people's kind of judgments, but not necessarily worried about our own, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Okay. But I really read it like this. I thought that it was really, really important. But anyway, your book, even if that was only a joke, it's still about what kind of a queer family. What is it? A queer family? What kind of a queer family should we build? Should queer families build in opposition to normative family?
Yeah. I mean, I think that there are new kinds of families being built, but at the same time, I think that it's important. I'm not quite sure in Spain what people think, but in the States, a lot of activism has been spent because here we don't have health insurance unless you're married or have a job. So a lot of energy here has been spent trying to break the family away from getting basic rights met. And I think that that means recognizing queer families and gay families, yes, trans families and things, but it also means just recognizing any human being living in any situation and anything that is intimately, a family, whether it's intergenerational or it's, living in a commune or a squad or whatever it is, that, how to recognize all these kinds of living and to get what you need and care. So in that sense, I think that queer, it kind of is two things. Like one, it's related to the history of GLBTQ peoples and movements. And on the other, it also, the word means to recognize when everything doesn't line up according to the family structures of a patriarchal family, heteronormative family. And so those two things have crossover, but they don't need to be quite exactly the same thing, if you follow what I'm saying.
Yeah. Okay. There is another contradiction that you point out, or so another question you make is that, it is kind of funny also, is that why is it that maternity is still not seen as a subversion? You talk about the woman's body as being maybe one of the queerest moments of its body, and still it's one of the moments where typical femininity codes are heavier than ever. What do you think still like this?
Well, again, I mean, I think it all depends on what you mean by queer, and I think that the sense that you're describing is like the feeling of something being made strange or denaturalized, or becoming monstrous to yourself, and defamiliarized in that way. So in that sense, I think any pregnant woman or a pregnant person, at least I did too, also feels, in addition to that denaturalization, defamiliarization, and queer feelings, also feels very, there's a whole ready-made structure, like, I am a mother now, and I have mother's rights, and, like all this stuff that I'm not immune to at all, that is very, I think both of those currents can float through you, the normative and the queer, all the time. I don't think people are really all one or the other. So it's a matter of becoming aware of those things,
But do you think at some point it will be considered or seen as a subversion or not? There will always be
I don't think maternity needs to be a subversion per se. I think that there's a phrase that Fred Moten, who's a philosopher in the States, has used that he calls the socialization of the maternal. And I think that when the maternal function is more socialized, in a sense, which is to your first point about caretaking, when the idea that all, care, even care for the climate or care for anything, is all kind of somehow a feminized activity. When that idea is more socialized and shared in by more people and not made the female the repository of it, I think that would be subversive, really subversive and fantastic,
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And then at some other point you talk about the, there's a point where you and Harry have to run to get married because maybe there will be a law that will forbid same-sex marriage.
Yeah.
And then you start thinking that this is like really getting into the system. It's like, do you think that the LGBT community is losing a bit of the subversion it used to have? That it's really getting into it's gotten already.
Yeah.
Capitalism has been.
Yeah, I think definitely.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's a tragedy for the same reasons that some people think, in that I think some people think, to me, I don't think people should be so, I think it's a little paternalistic to worry that people who might otherwise have been, queer freedom fighters are now going to become, married housewives. Like that to me is not where my concern is, because I don't want to tell other people, like I know a lot of very conservative gay people, and I don't, they have their own decisions to make, So I do think it's a tragedy. I think what it means is that to be queer, subversive, is always on the move. And I don't think there's anything to be gained by continuing to not have people have legal rights about their children or about their families, so that they can be made, rightless, stateless citizens, unable to go to the hospital, and because you're a queer parent, like you don't want any of those things. So I don't think, and I think the fantasy that we could all remain uncontaminated by the state is just a fantasy. I mean, it doesn't. I think the question is more how much you internalize those things as meaningful rather than strategic. I think of them as strategic. I don't think of them as, oh, I just want the warm embrace of the government to make me feel whole. That is not what I'm looking for,
Yeah. Okay. I wanted to talk also about language, because there's a great deal of that in the book, because the book is very special, because you make like an opposition between what you believe, Maggie believes, that language can express everything.
Yeah.
And instead you fight a little bit with Harry about this, because he says no, that language fails to express something.
Yeah.
Do you think your position is related to the fact that you're a writer and you work words? Maybe.
Yeah, but Harry is also a writer, and he wrote a book that came out actually in the pandemic in March called My Meteorite, which is amazing.
Oh, really?
And and I don't know if it's in Spain yet, but it should be. It's amazing. It's called My Meteorite, or Without the Random, There Can Be No New Thing, is what the full title is. Anyway, so he uses language in his art all the time. So I think that was another slight misunderstanding about the book, that Harry was very irritated that people were treating him like, oh, you're the mute artist and she's the lady of words. And he was like, Harry's a big talker and uses words a lot. So he was like, no. He's like, you can mistrust language and use it all the time. That's not, so I think it was more, just a difference in our sentiments, in that I'm kind of a lay Buddhist, where I kind of believe that everything, when the Buddha was enlightened, he touched the ground and said, the earth is my witness, and kind of feeling like everything that we need is right here and we can touch it. And Harry, as per My Meteorite, the title, is more somebody who's very interested in outer space and the unknowable, and big mysteries of the universe, big, literally black holes, big gaps in what we can know. And a lot of his artwork is about literally kind of making, negative space, or places to look for lost meaning, or things that can't be contained by form. So I think we're just very different, like in terms of our intellectual interests. And I think we've both come to, we like each other because we're different in that way.
But then your position about it, do you still think the same? I mean, do you think, are you still like a follower of Wittgenstein?
Yeah, I mean, Wittgenstein was one of the most mystical philosophers around, even though he was very interested in precision in language. And especially because like he says, the more precise you are around that which can be said, the more room you make for that which can't be explained. So I'm very, precision of language is like a religion for me, because I trust it will outline all the rest,
What's more special, I think, about the book is the way you mix like the voice of an intimate diary. It could be said that it's an intimate diary of a woman who's pregnant and explains her daily experience. with all these academic voices, no? All these Roland Barthes and Preciado and Butler and all of them who discuss very abstract concepts. And how, were they things that you had read before? Or did you read some of them specifically to write the book? What were you, how did you?
Well, it was funny because this book was kind of, I went to college in the 90s, in the early 90s and late 80s, early 90s. And, you know, a lot of the stuff in this book was feminist and queer theory that I read then and have been thinking about ever since. And so actually one of the meanest things, they didn't mean it to be mean, but that anybody said to me about this book was they said, I love how you weren't afraid to date yourself with all the theorists that you mentioned, you know, because they were like, nobody's talking about the, you know, half the people you quote anymore. And I thought, oh, that's embarrassing. But I didn't care because if they're good philosophers or theorists, then the work, you know, you should think about it forever, you know. But I definitely feel like the book was a lot of people and ideas I've been thinking about for a very long time, you know, very long time, like 30 years or, you know, 25 years. And then some things like, you know, Testo Junkie came out, I think, in the final months when I was finishing this book, and I found it very, very encouraging and freeing in terms of, no, it must have been a little bit earlier since I quote from it, so it must have been when I was still working on it, but it felt, you know, Preciado goes back and forth between autobiographical, I mean, more specifically, you know, but like love story stuff, you know, big, heavy, dense theory. And my book is more interwoven, but I felt a lot of kinship with the methodology, and so that was something I read along the way.
But how did you manage to? How did you decide that you were only going to put the names on the, you know, and not say exactly the sentences, and not put the, you know, the foot?
I just copied it from Roland Barthes. He does that. And I have other books, like a book Bluets and other books where I solve the quotation problem differently. So like in Bluets, I use parentheses. Here, I didn't like the parentheses. It just didn't look good. So I just skim other books to see how they do it, you know, and I thought that I really liked in like The Neutral by Barthes, like, you know, you can skim the margins just to see what he's talking about. And I thought it would be fun to do that here too. So I actually copied it very directly. Like, I think the font and the grayscale are the same, you know, like I was like, oh, he puts his in grayscale, so will I, you know, so it was very direct. You know.
Oh, really?
Well, also Roland Barthes, that particular book of his, you know, gave my book its title from the Argonauts, from his retelling of the Theseus's paradox about the Argos. So I kind of also wanted to do like a full homage, you know.
Yeah. Okay. And you also read Roland Barthes at college?
I did, yeah. But I loved Roland Barthes from college on, and I, you know, I think of him, you know, as much as a writer, as a theorist. So I think that if you're someone like me who, like, I like autobiography, but I don't really like, you know, I like experiments in autobiography, and certainly, you know, Camera Lucida and RB by RB and, you know, all the late work are very inspirational in terms of form for experimental autobiography. You know.
Yeah. Okay. No, it's really amazing. I mean, really the result of the book, you read it and it works so well.
Oh, I'm so glad. Thank you.
I think the most difficult thing to do was that, you know, mix these two levels of, because it's what's more original is the someone who explains a pregnancy,
right,
is still talking about, you know, these Roland Barthes and all this. This is what really makes it special to me.
Well, also Roland Barthes was very important because he is known for living with his mother and writing about his mother. And as I say in the book, I was very interested. Back in graduate school, I had attended a talk that was a a critic, Jane Gallup, who was trying to contend with Roland Barthes. And I was way back then, where I had no interest in having children or anything, but I just thought, wow, that really is interesting, isn't it? This whole, Roland Barthes and the maternity thing. So I think it was very, it was very natural and interesting for me to wonder what would his form or style look like, but from the subject position of the mother, not the object,
Yeah. And it works out fine.
Thank you. That's why anyone listening, you shouldn't get the ebook. Well, you could get the ebook, but on the electric book, the margin is all messed up. So
I know. So then, the book is also, of course, it's also about transition, and travel and change, of course, a lot. But it's someone, especially Harry, who's traveling not exactly from A to B, but it's traveling from around A to around B, and he's just he wants to stay somewhere in the middle, not exactly going to B. Do you think that these newer generations are more able to deal with this fluidity in gender identity? And do you think it's going to stay like this? It's not going to be so clear? I think that's the.
I mean, so we hope, I think clearly there's a whole huge new movement, which is fantastic. I mean, my son is little and your child is little, and, it's not perfect, but the things he's learning in school are, sometimes the teachers still aren't the ones that teach it. Like his class was doing a Zoom meeting the other day, and they were talking about boys and girls, and one of the 8-year-olds on Zoom said, you guys are forgetting that there are many other people who are not boys or girls, and we should include them in this conversation too. And I was like, and so the teacher was corrected by an 8-year-old, which I thought was great. So there's a lot of that's. I think that running through current queer politics and theorizing, and some of them are. Some of them were interesting in that, my whole book takes a lot of pains to not describe Harry as a trans man or anything, ways that he doesn't identify. It was interesting to see that a lot of people, in trying to be very politically correct, would kind of re-put gender binary narratives and words onto the book that the book doesn't even use. So, that was troubling and a little sad, but it also just shows that it's just difficult. It's difficult for people to stay in between, and that's just how it is right now. So
yeah, it is. Well, I have to say that and that's for the translation, in Romance languages such as Catalan or Spanish, we cannot be so ambiguous as English.
Right. Yeah.
So it was almost impossible to translate all this ambiguity, because we need to put there's gender marks in the word.
And what's very difficult is that it's very hard for people to understand that you can, like Harry, choose a male pronoun, but actually not identify as male, So, there's a lot of different variations in how people understand and feel themselves, including me, including everybody. It's not, it's not about other bodies. I think it's about everybody. So.
Yeah. So, for example, what at some point you say that in the book you decided not to talk about some things. What was the most difficult thing that to write in the book? The ones that stayed in the book. Which do you remember? I know it's a long time ago.
The most difficult parts of the book to write down.
To write down, yes.
I don't know. It's a good question. I think I feel the Argonauts I wrote while pregnant, and then in the first couple of years of having my baby, and I think I was beginning to understand a little bit more about the inherent failures in being a mother. And I think I know much more now than I knew then. And I think writing about my own mother and taking her to task for things, as I've gotten further away from the book, I feel like even though I saw myself doing it and kind of half apologized while doing it in the book, I think that I think I feel, more grateful to her now than even I felt when I wrote it. So I think that was hard to figure out what the right tone was in that,
Okay, yeah, I can imagine. And but
I didn't want to get anything in the book that Harry didn't like, so we worked on that for a long time,
Yeah. Well, at some point you explain that you go
right, yeah.
to dinner,
And I think it's fine if some people don't like my representation of us or of him, but it was very just most important to me personally that between he and I, everything was was good, and everything has been good, so that's good.
Yeah. What do you think about autobiography, like as a form? You've used it now in other books, Bluets and other.
Yeah. I mean,
you're not afraid of exposing yourself, of explaining what you.
No, I mean, I came to writing through poetry, through writing lyric poetry, and I think my thesis when I was 19 in college was called The Performance of Intimacy. It was about confessional writing and the use of the I. So I've always been really interested in I wouldn't say in exposure. I would just say in construction and in performance of the self, and I think of it as just as much of an art as a novel or anything. So I don't think of it as like a lesser form. I mean, a lot of my favorite books are autobiographical, or just like Montaigne or something, just essays that you don't really know. Sir Thomas Browne, you don't really know what they are. They're just whatever they are,
And that's difficult, I know, and I know I don't want to put you into saying cliches, but do you think there are differences, like important differences in autobiography written by women than autobiography written by men? Do you think there's a different level of exposure or construction, or that you can really tell, or not?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think that my favorite male autobiographers, like Hervé Goubert or David Bravenovich, or I feel like in many ways Roland Barthes, I feel like in many ways they taught me how to write and not to go for the jugular, like to get. So I don't feel like there's a gender difference per se, but I think that women have because of the sexism that aligns them with the personal and with the body. They have a different that writing, like Hervé Goubert can be like transgressive, and it's very exciting. And then whereas if you were writing about the body and you're female, it's going to be read as not necessarily transgressive in the same way. So I think that it's not so much what the writers do, it's more how the writing is perceived,
Yeah, it's more of a context.
Yeah.
Not for the how it will be read.
Like reception, yeah.
Reception, that will change it, no?
Yeah. But the writing, writers are great because they write whatever they want, and they have for centuries. And so I have, heroes of all kinds that teach me,
What's the last really, really good book that you've read? You can recommend to us?
Well, I just read this morning at 4 a.m. because my son gets up at 6:30, and in the pandemic, that's the only time I have to myself. Judith Butler has a new book called The Force of Nonviolence, which is about nonviolence now. I thought it was great, really loved it, so I recommend that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And okay, so what a pity that you couldn't.
I know, I'm so sad. I know. I mean, I really hope one day we can travel again.
Yeah. Let's hope. Yeah. Let's hope you can. Yeah.
I mean, the fact that you guys are having this meeting together means that you're way further along than we are here. So
a little bit, but everything is very. You never know when I'm going to be in 2 months. Maybe.
Well, pray for our election, everybody. I don't know when you'll be seeing. Pray for us.
Yeah, I didn't want to ask you about
No,
this.
just pray for us.
Yeah.
Whoever you pray to, pray to.
We will.
Okay.
Yeah. It's going to be very difficult.
37 days, pray, okay.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so everything now is about this, no? Here, I guess.
Yeah, and here, fire. But all the problems that we're having are all interconnected, so like the fires outside and the pandemic and the election, they're all one issue in a way. So yeah.
Are you writing anything? Are you publishing the next?
I just finished a new book. It was very hard to finish during the pandemic, but I just finished it, and it'll be out in a year, so September 2021. So.
Good.
I know. It was the book I was working on when the Argonauts interrupted it. So it's been a very long, I think I started working on it in 2015. So it's been a long time.
Okay. So for me,
okay, great. Thank you for your excellent questions. Really great to meet you. Thank you. And thank you so much for translating the book. I really, really, really appreciate it.
No, thank you for writing it. And let's hope we'll meet you.
Yes,
again.
I hope so too. I will come anytime when I can. Yeah.
Okay.
Sí, a nosaltres, vale. Potser sí. Val. Ai, que bé. Que bé.
Doncs, bueno, milions de gràcies. Tenim només com 10 minutets perquè ara haurem de sortir de la sala abans del pròxim acte per poder desinfectar totes les cadires perquè com que hi ha canvi de persones, algunes us quedeu, d'altres no.
Més al micro.
Ai, he de parlar molt a prop d'aquí, perdó. Segur, està net això, doncs això, que deia que haurem de sortir perquè com que hi ha canvi de gent, algunes us quedeu i d'altres no, i ve gent nova, hem de desinfectar totes les cadires per protocol i per tant només tenim 10 minutets. Si teniu alguna pregunta que vulgueu fer-li a la Marina, aprofitant que coneix el llibre en profunditat, potser més bé que l'autora i tot, perquè això de traduir, no?
No ho sé. Home, ella jo crec que no se'n recordava tant ja.
Bueno, clar.
Pobra.
Si el va escriure fa no sé quants anys.
Veig que no.
Sí? No, jo puc fer preguntes, però crec que és més interessant. Sí. Espera un segon. És que si no, no et sentiran a casa.
Oh.
És que si no, a l'streaming a casa no et senten.
Sí, o...
Val, sí.
Sí.
Bueno, que muchas gracias, tal. Y que experiencia como traductora de enfrentarse a traducir un libro tan personal, primero de todo, y con tantos aspectos diferentes de géneros de literatura, ¿no? en un mismo libro. Un poco hablar eso de la experiencia y también, de hecho, entonces de enfrentarte a la ambigüedad de géneros en la traducción como lenguaje.
Sí, claro. Gràcies. En català, pot ser? Sí.
Festival de literatura queer en llengua catalana.
Bueno.
Sí.
Doncs, bueno, però en realitat és com qualsevol altre llibre, Això sí que no ve traducció. La forma és com si fos una novel·la, una autobiografia més o menys fictícia. I clar, la qüestió del gènere, és veritat que l'anglès de seguida han de posar he o she, evidentment, això no poden sortir d'aquí, però clar, nosaltres, llengües romàniques, hem de posar la marca de gènere. Clar, llavors, amb l'editora vam parlar què fem. Deixem tota l'estona Harry, li posem tot en masculí, o sigui, o li posem femení, o alternem, i clar, al final vam deixar-ho en masculí. I com ella diu, bueno, és igual, una cosa és que jo li posi he, o sigui, que ell es defineixi com a he, però l'altra cosa és que ell es consideri home, no té res a veure, la gent ho confon, però... I llavors, clar, vam haver de triar. Sí, això sí. però la resta no. Clar, just abans de començar a parlar, d'enregistrar la conversa, sí que li vaig poder dir a la Maggie, que li vaig dir, oh, quina casualitat, l'he estat traduint el 2019, diguem, mentre la meva dona estava embarassada. I llavors, clar, era com, ostres, que fort, estic traduint el mateix que m'està passant a casa meva. O sigui, i al final del llibre és tota la descripció del part, amb molt detall. I clar, llavors li vaig prohibir a ella que el llegís, fins que no hagués parit. I llavors sí que després de tenir la nena és el primer llibre que es va llegir, això sí. Però això és casualitat, però era com, ostres, fantàstic. Però sí, la veritat és que només vam haver de fer aquesta decisió del quin gènere li posàvem en totes les paraules que feien referència al Harry. Digues.
Bé, la meva pregunta també va sobre traducció. Perdó, que soc estudiant de traducció i fa tot just un dia que m'he acabat el llibre. I quan el vaig començar a llegir, allò que em va sobtar més és que la Maggie canvia de tema molt sovint, explica coses molt seguit, de sobte de paràgraf canvia de tema completament, comença a explicar coses personals, després citacions, referències, etc. I no, només em preguntava també si et vas, així com per a la gent que llegim el llibre, al principi mos sobte, mos hi acabem acostumant a mesura que llegim el llibre, però al principi també mos sobte. I a l'hora de traduir, això et va costar el fet que canvies tant de temes? No sé, perdó, m'estic fent un embolic jo mateixa.
No, és difícil, o sigui, és de les coses difícils que he traduït, sí, perquè a més això, no tens referent on enganxar-te, no hi ha un argument, no tota l'estona parla del mateix. Havia de buscar, clar, a més de vegades havia de buscar les cites dels llibres, intentar trobar el Bart en català o en castellà almenys per no equivocar-me amb la traducció. No, és difícil, sí. Perquè els que no heu llegit ja veureu, és que està explicant una cosa i de cop introdueix una frase que en realitat és una cita, però sembla que no es noti. I es posa el nom de l'autor al marge, això que diu que va copiar del Bart. Vull dir, realment és molt subtil, és una cosa sofisticada, molt. Però bueno, i el primer paràgraf, la primera pàgina, tan difícil, vaig estar tantes, vam fer 1000 versions, era el més difícil, que dius, hosti, per què has de començar així, tia? Però bueno, clar, expressament. Però era molt difícil, el primer paràgraf va ser horrible i encara, no sé, encara el miro a vegades i penso, no sé si està molt bé, però bueno.
Això no s'ha de fer, quan has acabat una traducció ja està, perquè si no...
Que em vaig haver d'entrevistar-la, ho vaig tornar a veure.
Què més tenim?
Jo tinc una pregunta sobre l'humor, perquè aquí estem rient, a l'entrevista hem rigut, jo crec que el llibre té un particular sentit de l'humor, però molt particular, i no és habitual que aparegui el tema de l'humor quan es parla d'aquests temes, perquè com que ens hem de posar seriosos, com que tot és sensible i delicat, no sé si tu vas detectar algun humor o no, i en l'entrevista sí, suposo, perquè ho hem vist tots, no?
Sí, és veritat. Sí, no és que sigui d'humor, però sí que és veritat que una de les gràcies que té és que això que desacralitza els temes, no? De la mateixa manera que baixa com els tòtems, no? El Bart i els baixa i els barreja amb avui estic embarassada i tinc mal de patxa i no sé què. De la mateixa manera també sí que li posa una mica d'humor, tot ho gira. És que el que és molt... Bueno, també veient l'entrevista també encara ho veia, no? Moltes preguntes em contestava com al revés, no? Em deia, no, això... Fixa't, i moltes vegades deia, això es va entendre malament, això no sé què, molt... Sí que té una capacitat molt grossa com de tota l'estona qüestionar-ho tot i fer-ho com tot des de la... És molt poc acadèmica, encara que ella ho sigui, hagi estat a la universitat molt temps, no parla des d'un pedestal, no? Tot ho qüestiona, i això potser sí que va amb l'humor. I és veritat que allò que diu de l'escena és una escena molt divertida, que és que una amiga veu una foto d'ells i els diu això és molt heteronormatiu, jaja.
La tassa que no sé si ha regalat la sogra o la seva mare, algú li ha regalat una tassa.
Sí, i l'amiga diu, però què és això? I ella ha insistit aquí que no, que era una broma, que estaven fent les dues amigues, que no era... I molta gent ho va interpretar com algo molt seriós. Clar, la Maggie Nelson diu que no podem tenir aquest aspecte heteronormatiu, perquè clar... I diu, no, que era una broma. Vull dir, sí, és veritat, tens raó, que és... Però jo ho veig des d'aquest punt de vista, que la gràcia d'aquest llibre també és que dona la volta a tot i desacralitza.
Bueno, i també crec que una de les qualitats que té tant quan l'entrevistes com quan escriu és que, clar, les coses que per alguna gent són debats abstractes, com les identitats no binàries, no? Que tothom s'atreveix com a parlar-ne, bueno, per altra gent és la seva vida, i si és la teva vida no pots estar-hi pensant tota l'estona com si fos, no, la gran qüestió filosòfica. És la teva vida, ets així i ja està, no? I no cal donar-hi tantes voltes, potser, o sí, però des d'un altre lloc, no?
Exacte, sí. Clar, ella ho viu cada dia, o sigui, amb el Harry i amb tota la família que han format. I llavors, és veritat, això es nota, que per ella és això que diu, és com el títol del llibre, no? Els Argonautes, que és l'anar al vaixell aquest, que és una metàfora que s'han d'anar canviant les peces del vaixell, que quan arriba al final del viatge no és el mateix vaixell que quan va començar. Ella això ho agafa de metàfora de tot, o sigui, la vida és anar canviant, com quan diu què és l'activisme, no? I el ser queer o el moviment sempre canviarà, o sigui, no ens podem quedar dient és això, el moviment queer ha d'aconseguir això i això, no, perquè demà hi haurà d'aconseguir una altra cosa, no? I la gràcia és entendre-ho i saber estar sempre en moviment.
Com anem de temps? Tenim temps per una altra pregunta? D'acord.
Això què vol dir?
Doncs sí, que hem de plegar perquè si no podem desinfectar les cadires. Llavors, moltíssimes gràcies per venir, un aplaudiment per la Marina i tot seguit, fora d'aquí.
Cap allà.